So when you do this with like a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, something with a little bit of girth, that you actually have something to like bear down against, that's how it works the best. But if you activate that hamstring hard enough, you might get into a little cramping, it's totally fine. Just want to make sure that you keep that low back. Let's get it down a little bit. There you go. Yeah. You don't really have too much range of motion through your hip. You probably have less than you think that you do. Because a lot of it is probably actually coming from twisting and opening through the back as opposed to exploring the joint, the end range of motion up the joint. Does that make sense? There's a difference between doing this, as far as that knee will go out just by the joint, versus this. See what I mean? So just bear that in mind with some of these types of exercises. Anybody got any questions on that? Between those two drills, like that's a hell of a hip warm up. All right, guys. So now we're going to get into some of these specifics as it applies to preparing for your squat, and then you guys are going to get into the real fun stuff. So let's take your shoes off. We're going to work on toe strength and toe independence. So what I want you guys to do is spread your toes as much as you can and grip the ground. You guys are familiar with the cue of gripping the ground, like in your lifts? Good. So all we're working on here is just rooting sensation. Now, keep the toes down, lift your big toes. Hard, or I should say as far as they will go. Lifting those big toes up.
Just the big toes?
Just the big toes. Like you're giving a thumbs up with your feet. Now, push the big toes down. Do that again, raise the big toes. One more time, push the big toes down. And raise them up one more time. You know, it's super interesting. It just goes to show that the body is one piece. Look how many of you are pointing with your hands. Now we're going to do the opposite. Keep your big toe down, raise the toes. And relax. And again, we're going to do that for 2 more reps. Keep your big toes down, raise the other toes. And actively try to spread them. Really trying to reach that pinky toe out.
They're supposed to be cramping.
Yeah. You may cramp in your tibia.
No, just in the bottoms of my feet.
You may cramp into the bottom of your feet. Yeah. And relax. Last thing that we're going to do for your toes is waves. Waves. So pick your toes up and spread them, and then from the pinkies in, set them down. Spread them, pinkies to big toes. Put them down one at a time. Okay. Spread them, put them down. Try that a couple more times. See if you can do that while maintaining deep breathing through the nose and without doing anything crazy with your hands. Okay, it's like break your body. All right, cool guys. Toes, any questions? It's wacky, but just consider, man, like you wouldn't want to squat or deadlift in high heel shoes, or shoes that put undue compression on your toes, right? You don't, a foot that looks like this, like you're in a Chinese bind, is not going to be nearly as strong as a foot that is like spread out. You know what I mean? So when we're talking about rooting, we're talking about squats and deadlifts from the ground up, having strong toes who are actually able to control your toes, your ankles, your feet is very important. Again, why do we have wide toe boxes in shoes for lifting? Is to promote as much of a wide base, stability, and rooting as we can possibly get. So practice and stuff. Ankle circles, this is going to be pretty simple. You might need to hold on to something for balance. But all I want you to do is to draw a big circle with your ankle. So the same way that we were kind of just doing this with the hip, you're doing this with the ankle. So you're not moving your entire leg, you're not even moving from the knee, you're just moving from the ankle, drawing as big of a circle as you can. So when you're pointing, you're really pointing and flexing the calf. When you're dorsiflexing, you're really flexing and using the tibialis there. So you're actively using your foot and lower leg muscles to facilitate the ankle circles. So once you do a couple in each direction, obviously we'll go ahead and switch sides. Eventually get into the point where you can do this like without holding on to anything is good. And so ankles is one of those joints where we just in general don't give them much attention, and we're on them all the time. And you're bound up in big shoes a lot of the time. And if you're like me and you got flat feet, you want to pay special attention to your foot and ankle health. So last thing we'll do before we really crank it up in your squats is we'll work on active dorsiflexion. So dorsiflexion is the angle between your shin and your top of your foot. You guys have probably heard that dorsiflexion, having good dorsiflexion is one of the key components for a good squat. I would probably argue for a good deadlift as well. And again, it's one of those things that we rarely work on in a strength or movement prep component until you go see your physical therapist. And if your physical therapist doesn't even lift, then you're probably wasting your time. You'll never get stronger in your squats. So all we're doing is we're taking a lot of these kind of rehab exercises and concepts and putting them on steroids, so to speak, so they actually benefit your strength performance. So by working active dorsiflexion, there's a lot of ways to do this. But one of my favorite ways is the combat stance active dorsiflexion drill. So depending on your hip mobility and how your knees are feeling, you may want to modify this. But what I want you to do is to come down to this low kneeling position, and we're going to be working on one leg at a time. So from here, what I want you to actively do is push this knee over the toe as far as it'll go without this heel popping up. Make sense? Without that heel popping up. Now once you max out your range of motion, and you really want to make sure that knee is tracking the toe, make sure you're not collapsing or anything like that. Make sure you're in line.
You're not even pushing.
Once you've got as far as you can into that stretch, I want you to actively lift your toes, and you're really working on this front shin muscle.
Yeah, I suck at this.
Really pull. You're working on pulling into that dorsiflexion, trying to close that angle under muscular control. Now, if you want to hold here, you can. To really check yourself to see if you've got that active dorsiflexion control, See, I got a pretty narrow angle here. Now I'm going to try to keep this angle as I rock out of it. Does that make sense?
Oh my God.
See if you can keep that same angle as you rock out of it. And that will prove what you can control versus what is just being smashed by gravity. Does that make sense? Right. So if you can get active good dorsiflexion under muscular control, then you're golden. If you can get there deep just by hanging, that's just by shoving your joint into the position, that's fine. But just bear in mind that it's passive range of motion. And if you're powerlifting with passive range of motion, something is probably going to take up the slack somewhere else down the line. Okay? So as much range of motion as we can control is what's going to be the safest and the strongest. And then obviously you can do that on your other side. Getting into as deep of a position as you can. Knee way outside over the toe. I think at this point we all know that the whole knees over the toes will blow your patella out nonsense is kind of an antiquated idea. Now if you have poor mobility or some pre-existing condition, then yeah, it very well could be dangerous. But putting your knees forward is no more dangerous than putting your arm up over head. For some people, it's very contraindicated. As long as you're healthy, and as long as you actually train it while you are healthy, then it should be no problem. But so that is the active dorsiflexion drill. Get into it, come out of it, and see if you can maintain the same angle. All that makes sense? All right, let's lift some weights. Everybody familiar with a goblet squat? Kettlebell front squat?
Oh yeah.
We're going to do some goblet squats, and then we're going to hit real man squats. So go ahead and grab yourself a kettlebell or even a weight plate, and we're just going to do some front squats there with your kettlebell. Doesn't necessarily need to be too heavy.
There's 25-pound plates up here, or
Yeah, you can use plates. You can use kettlebells.
Good luck, Chad. You're welcome.
And obviously, if anybody has any questions, holler. So apart from that, we're gonna move promptly into our back squat. So all we're gonna do with your goblet squat is just work on full range of motion, or as deep as you can. When the elbow gets inside the knees, we're going to give a little push, and then come up.
you gotta touch it, Jake.
Yeah, that's good. You got 5 feet? Yeah. Or you can hold the bell out, to help that depth. And just knock out like a set of 20. Set of 20 at your own pace.
Get your fucking weight.
And bear in mind, we're stacking all of these skills we've talked about. Your diaphragmatic breathing, your core work, your rooting to the ground, pushing with the toes, your spread with the toes. Hopefully your knees and ankles feel good from doing all those drills we just did. And hopefully that translates into, a better squat. So actively pull yourself down, squeeze your butt tight as you come up. So obviously if we have more time, we do stuff like single leg glute bridges and other stuff to really activate your glutes. But if you're squeezing your butt tight enough during goblet squats, that's probably all you really need. Once you do 20, we're going to do one more hip opener, and then we're moving on. Okay, so this last thing we're going to do do something called a prying squat. So like literally, when you come down to a deep range of motion as you can control, you're gonna pry one hip at a time. Imagine that you're taking like a pole that's in the ground, and you're okay. So your femur is the telephone pole, your hip is the ground. So you're cranking it, reset, stand up. Okay? Push, stand up.
Say that one more time.
Standing up while you're pushing out? Or
Nope.
let go and then stay down?
Yep. So push, reset, stand up. Pinch a penny at the top. You guys all know what that means, right?
No, can you explain it? Yes.
I got some spare change.
Pinch a loaf.
I got some spare change in my car. We'll just go around and make sure everybody, privy. All right, guys. So do like 10 of those, and then we are done. Anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns? I know we went over a lot.
One question I had is it important to, well, not obvious, but is it important to do these things in a certain order? As far as like the drills, the 99 drills, McGill crunches, the drill big three, things like that.
Yeah, for the individual person, a sequence would be important, but that would kind of be based on your needs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you may not need to do, any given exercise, but in general, going from least to most active is the idea. So that's why like the breathing exercises, that's why we start with the breathing exercises, then we go into the stuff that's like dead bugs and plank work, then the McGill Big Three, then the high intensity joint circles. So kind of least to most active. And that's also inside out breathing. Then basic low intensity movement, then high intensity movement. In general.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll apart from that,
All right.
good work.
Awesome, man.
That's it for me. Thanks.
Y'all want it?